The history of the continent is often marked by the rise and fall of great powers, the shifting of borders, and the cataclysmic clashes between the forces of humanity and the legions of the Demon King. Yet the most significant turning point in modern history began not with a battle cry, but with the quiet, rhythmic footsteps of four weary travelers on a dirt road leading to the royal capital. It was the return of the Hero Party, an event that would signal the end of a 10-year crusade and the beginning of a new, quieter era. The group consisted of four distinct figures, each representing a pinnacle of their respective disciplines. At the vanguard walked Himmel, the hero, a human male of striking charisma and skill. His blue hair, catching the sunlight, was as recognizable to the populace as the royal crest itself. Beside him walked Eisen, a dwarf warrior whose stout frame and stoic demeanor belied a strength capable of shattering stone. Hyder, the human priest, followed with a gait that suggested a fondness for the comforts of life, specifically alcohol, yet his spiritual power was undeniable. Finally, trailing slightly behind or walking alongside with an air of detached curiosity was Frieren, the elven mage. As they approached the capital, the silhouette of the castle's spires piercing the horizon, Himmel paused. The journey had been long, 10 years of constant vigilance, sleeping in forests, navigating dungeons, and battling the minions of darkness. Now, with the Demon King defeated, the weight of their duty began to lift, replaced by the mundane reality of what comes next. "We have finally returned," Himmel remarked, his voice carrying a mix of relief and melancholy. The sight of the capital was not just a destination, it was the closing of a chapter. The Demon King is defeated. The world is at peace. Frieren, whose lifespan stretched far beyond the comprehension of her human companions, viewed the scene with a different perspective. To her, the 10-year journey was a mere fraction of her existence, a brief excursion in a life measured in millennia. It was short, she might have thought, though she simply nodded in agreement. Himmel, ever the pragmatist despite his heroic stature, turned the conversation to the immediate future. "Even heroes need to eat," he jested, suggesting that despite their legendary status, they would still need to seek employment and continue with their lives. It was a grounding moment, reminding them that while the quest was over, life itself continued. He looked at Frieren then, his expression softening. "The life ahead of you, Frieren, it will be much longer than ours." "I suppose so," Frieren replied nonchalantly. The concept of time was the great divider between them. For Himmel and Hyder, the decades ahead were the twilight of their lives. For Frieren, they were barely an afternoon. Upon entering the city gates, the party was not met with the bureaucratic processing of travelers, but with a roar that shook the very cobblestones. The citizens of the royal capital had gathered in the thousands. Confetti rained down like multicolored snow, creating a vibrant tapestry against the gray stone of the city streets. The air was thick with the sounds of trumpets, cheers, and the ringing of church bells. The king himself awaited them in the plaza, a breach of protocol that underscored the magnitude of their achievement. In a ceremony that would be recorded in every history book for generations to come, the hero party received the highest honors the kingdom could bestow. Statues were commissioned, stone likenesses that would stand in the plaza for centuries, preserving the image of the heroes in their prime. As the sun set on their triumphant return, the celebrations transitioned from formal ceremonies to a raucous festival. Lanterns illuminated the city, casting warm glows on the faces of the revelers. The hero party found a moment of respite on a balcony overlooking the square, drinks in hand. Himmel, gazing out at the festivities, broke the comfortable silence. "They are going to make statues of us," he said, a hint of vanity mixed with genuine pride in his voice. "We'll be remembered forever." The group began to reminisce. They spoke of the traps Eisen had triggered, the hangovers Hyder had nursed in the middle of dungeons, and the countless times Frieren's apathy had clashed with Himmel's dramatics. These memories, once potential sources of stress or danger, were now polished by nostalgia into humorous anecdotes. "It's hard to believe it's over," Himmel said. 10 years! "Thank you," he continued, looking at each of them in turn, "for the memories. It was a wonderful adventure." Frieren tilted her head, her expression placid. "It was only 10 years, she stated. The remark caught Himmel off guard. To a human, 10 years was a significant portion of a life, perhaps an eighth or a tenth. To an elf, it was less than a blink. "I suppose for you it was," Himmel conceded with a wistful smile. Suddenly, the night sky was streaked with light. The Era Meteors had begun. This celestial event, occurring only once every 50 years, was a spectacle of unparalleled beauty. Streaks of silver and blue fire cut across the darkness, mesmerizing the city below. "The Era Meteors," Himmel murmured, looking up. "They say they mark the beginning of an era." "It's hard to see them with all these city lights," Frieren critiqued, ever the perfectionist. "There's a place further north, a spot where the air is clear. You can see them perfectly there." She turned to the group. "I'll take you there next time, in 50 years. The proposition was absurd to a human mind, planning a casual outing half a century in the future. Yet Himmel laughed. 50 years, huh? We'll be old men by then, but all right, it's a promise." "We'll go," Eisen agreed. "If I'm still alive," Hyder joked, taking a sip of his wine. Thus, a pact was made, a promise that bridged the gap between the ephemeral human lifespan and the enduring elven time. The festivities ended, and the reality of their separation set in. The next day, the party accompanied Frieren to the stone bridge on the outskirts of the capital. She was leaving to pursue her own goal, collecting magic spells. "I'm going to the Central Lands. There are rumors of new magic there. I'll be back maybe 100 years, or 50. I'll visit." "Take care," Himmel said. He watched her with an intensity that Frieren, in her detachment, failed to fully register. "I wonder what kind of life you will lead." "Time passes differently for her," Hyder observed quietly as Frieren walked away, her figure growing smaller against the horizon. She did not look back. She walked into the future, leaving the past behind, unaware that the clock had started ticking on a tragedy she wouldn't understand until it was too late. For the next 50 years, Frieren wandered the continent. To the world, 50 years was a lifetime. Kingdoms could rise and fall, technologies could advance, children could grow into elders and pass away. To Frieren, it was a season of research. She traveled through forests, deserts, and mountains. She delved into ancient ruins and bartered with village merchants. Her goal was the accumulation of magic. Not necessarily powerful magic, but all magic. She learned spells to remove rust from bronze, spells to turn sweet grapes sour, and spells to clean tough stains. She was a scholar of the arcane, finding value in the utility of magic rather than just its destructive potential. During this period, she remained largely unchanged. Her physical appearance did not age a day. Her routine was solitary, punctuated only by brief interactions with the short-lived races she encountered. She was a constant in a changing world, a stone in a flowing river. As the 50th year approached, Frieren found herself in a magic shop in a distant town. She was searching for a specific component, the horn of a shadow dragon. "I'm sorry," the shopkeeper told her. "We don't have anything like that. Shadow dragons are incredibly rare." Frieren paused, a memory surfacing from the depths of her mind. "That's right," she realized. "We found one in the Demon King's castle." She remembered giving it to Himmel for safekeeping. "I left it with Himmel," she said. The realization brought the timeline into focus. The Era Meteors were due to return soon, the 50-year promise. "I have to go back," she decided, "to collect the horn and to see the meteors." Frieren returned to the royal capital. The city had changed. The architecture was different, the fashion had evolved, and the faces in the crowd were new. Yet the statue in the plaza remained, the statue of the hero party, now weathered by 5 decades of rain and wind. She made her way to Himmel's residence. When she saw him, she stopped. Himmel, the hero, the dashing young man with the blue hair and the bright smile, was gone. In his place sat an old man. He was bald, his skin wrinkled and spotted with age, his frame shrunken. "Frieren?" the old man rasped. "Himmel?" Frieren asked, her voice betraying a hint of shock. "It's been 50 years, Frieren," Himmel said, a gentle smile crinkling his eyes that were still the same brilliant blue. "You haven't changed a bit." "You have," Frieren said bluntly. "You're old." Himmel laughed, a dry, wheezing sound. "That's what happens to humans, Frieren." He retrieved the shadow dragon's horn from a wooden box. It was polished and well kept. "I kept it safe for you. I knew you'd come back." The reunion was bittersweet. Frieren was confronted with the brutal reality of human mortality. The man she had known was fading, his vitality replaced by frailty. Yet his spirit remained. He was still Himmel. They set out to find the others. Hyder was now a bishop in the Holy City. He, too, had aged significantly. His hair was gone, and he moved with the slow deliberation of the elderly. However, his vice remained. He still smelled faintly of liquor. Eisen, the dwarf, was the least changed of the companions, thanks to the longevity of his race. Though his beard had grayed and his movements were stiffer, he was still the sturdy warrior of old. "Look at us," Hyder joked, "a gathering of old men." "Speak for yourself," Eisen grumbled. Frieren looked at her companions. The hero party was reunited, but it was a shadow of its former self. "The viewing spot is a week's travel away," Frieren announced. "A week?" Himmel looked concerned. "My walking days are long over, Frieren." "We'll manage," Frieren said. "I'll help." The journey to the meteor viewing spot became a final adventure for the group. It was slow. They traveled by carriage, stopping frequently. They sat around campfires, drinking tea instead of ale, mostly, and talking. Himmel was particularly reflective. "I missed this," he said, looking at the fire. "Traveling with you all. It was the best time of my life." "We know," Eisen said softly. They reached the location Frieren had spoken of, a high plateau with a crystal-clear lake. The air was thin and cold, free from the light pollution of the cities. As night fell, the sky erupted in light. The Era Meteors returned, a cascade of falling stars that reflected in the lake, surrounding them in a sphere of celestial fire. Himmel watched with tears in his eyes. "It's beautiful," he whispered. He turned to Frieren. "Thank you, Frieren, for showing me this, for this final adventure." Frieren watched him. She saw the gratitude, the love, and the peace in his face. She felt a strange tightness in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name. Shortly after their return to the capital, Himmel passed away. It was a peaceful death, the natural conclusion to a life well lived. The funeral was a grand affair, attended by thousands. Himmel lay in his coffin, dressed in his hero's garb, his sword resting on his chest, surrounded by flowers. Heider, as the bishop, conducted the service. Himmel was a hero, he proclaimed to the weeping congregation. He was happy. He lived a life without regrets. Frieren stood with the other mourners, her face dry. She heard the whispers of the crowd around her. "Look at her," they murmured. "The mage, she's not even crying. Cold-hearted. Does she even care? They traveled together for 10 years. The words pierced Frieren's detachment. 10 years. The thought echoed in her mind. We traveled together for only 10 years. Suddenly the dam broke. The realization of what she had lost crashed down upon her. She had treated their time together as a triviality, a brief interlude in her eternal life. She had assumed there would always be more time, but there wasn't. Himmel was gone, and she had never truly tried to know him. Tears welled up in her eyes and spilled over. She fell to her knees, sobbing in the middle of the church. "I knew him for only 10 years, she cried, her voice filled with regret. "I didn't try to get to know him at all. Why didn't I?" Heider and Eisen gathered around her, shielding her from the crowd, offering silent comfort. The great mage, who had defeated demons and mastered magic, was brought to her knees by the simple, crushing weight of human mortality. After the funeral, the remaining 3 stood by the river. "I'm going back to the holy city," Heider said. "My work isn't done. I'm retiring." "And you?" Heider asked Frieren. I wiped her eyes. "I'm going to travel again." "To collect magic?" "Yes," Frieren said, "but I also want to learn about humans. I want to understand them. I want to know what I missed." Heider smiled. "That is a good goal." He looked at her with a knowing expression. "You know, Frieren, we may not meet again. Are you unafraid?" "I don't know," Frieren admitted. "We will meet in heaven," Heider said confidently. "Himmel is there. We will all be together again someday." They parted ways. Frieren walked away, but this time her journey had a new purpose. She was no longer just an observer. She was a student of the heart. 20 years passed. Frieren found herself in the woods near the holy city. She was lost, a common occurrence for her. She was discovered by a young girl with purple eyes and a solemn expression. The girl led her to a cottage where an ancient Heider sat waiting. "You're late," Heider teased, his voice barely a whisper. He was on death's door, kept alive only by his immense magical power and willpower. He introduced the girl as Fern, a war orphan he had taken in. "Frieren," Heider said, "I have a favor. Take her as your apprentice." Frieren refused. "Apprentices die. Magic is dangerous. I don't want to see another person I care about die." Heider nodded, expecting the refusal. "Then I have another request. Decipher this grimoire." He handed him a book written by the legendary sage Ewig. "It contains spells for immortality and resurrection," Heider claimed. Frieren was skeptical. You interested in immortality? You said you were ready for heaven. I am a hypocrite, Hyder admitted with a weak laugh. I fear death. I want more time. Please, Frieren, it will take years to decipher. Stay here, and while you work, teach Fern a little magic, just to pass the time. Frieren agreed. She saw through the ruse. Hyder didn't want immortality for himself. He wanted Frieren to stay long enough to bond with Fern, to ensure the girl would be alone when he passed. Frieren spent years at the cottage. She deciphered the code of the grimoire, finding it to be largely a historical record rather than a practical spellbook for resurrection. But she kept her promise. She taught Fern. Fern was a prodigy. She possessed an immense capacity for mana and a discipline that rivaled Eisen's. One day, Frieren found Fern by a ravine. The girl was trying to blast a rock on the far side. "I can't reach it," Fern said, frustrated. "My magic dissipates." Frieren watched her. "Do you like magic?" she asked. Fern hesitated. I think so, when it works. I like the feeling." "Good," Frieren smiled. "You're like me." She stepped forward and demonstrated. "It's about visualization," she explained. "You don't just throw magic, you picture the result. You believe in it." With a flick of her staff, Frieren obliterated the rock. Fern watched, her eyes wide. In that moment, the legacy of the hero party was passed down, from Himmel to Hyder, and now, through Frieren, to Fern. The journey would continue, not as a repetition of the past, but as a new story written in the ink of memory and the magic of the future.